Janatira vanajari Tamunatira vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabiyari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabiyari Jaya Gopi Janavadava Girivaradari Jaya Gopi Janavadava Girivaradari Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Sanatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabiyari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabiyari Gopi Janavadava Girivaradari Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Tamunatira Vanachari Tamunatira Vanachari Shishi Radha Madhava ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Shishi Kunatai Mahaprabhu Shashi ki. Reading from Prabhupada, Your Ever Well-Wisher by Seswarup Das Goswami. Prabhupada had the extraordinary ability to bring a spiritual vision into physical reality, to change a part of the material world into spiritual energy, so that even a common man could perceive the spiritual reality. This was Prabhupada's constant effort. Often a transcendentalist hesitates to deal with the material world, fearing he may become spiritually weakened. The Vedic injunctions, therefore, warn the transcendentalist to avoid associating with money and materialistic persons. But Prabhupada, following the principles taught by Srila Rupa Goswami, saw that everything material had the potential of being used in the service of Krishna, and thus of regaining its spiritual nature. Following this principle, an expert devotee, although apparently acting within the material sphere, could remain always in touch with the spiritual energy. Such a devotee, nothing was material. In the Vedic scriptures, the great devotee Narada Muni, because of his ability to convert materialistic men into devotees, is referred to as Chintamani, touchstone. Vishta's Chintamani is said to convert iron into gold. So Narada could transform a beast-like hunter into a pure Vaishnav. And as Narada is glorified in the Vedas for accomplishing such feats in bygone ages, So Srila Prabhupada is a similarly potent touchstone in the present age. Again and again he showed by his straightforward application of Krishna consciousness that he could change a materialist into a completely renounced active devotee of the Lord. And now, after recruiting a number of devotees from Maya's camp, he wanted to engage them in transforming as much as possible the material world into living spirit. By his transcendental visionary words, he was attempting to convert stones and human energy into glorious spiritual temples. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 15, Text 6. Bhuter Bhutani Bhuteshaha Bhutar Bhutani Bhutesha Sijayati Avati Hanti Cha Srijachavati Hanti Cha Atmasrister Aswatantre Atmasrister Aswatantre Anapeksho Api Bharavat Anapekshopi Bhalavat Bhuter Bhutani Bhutesha Shija Chavati Hanti Cha Atmasishte Ashwatantre Anapekshopi Bhalavat Bhuter Bhutani Bhutesha Shija Chavati Hanti Cha Atmasishte Ashwatantre Anapekshopi Bhalavat Bhuter Bhutani Bhutesha Shija Chavati Hanti Cha Atmasishte Ashwatantre Anapekshopi Bhalavat. Bhute Bhutani Bhutesha Shicha Chavati Hanti Cha Atmasishte Ashwatantre Anapeksho Bhalavat Bhute Bhutani Bhutesha Shicha Chavati Hanti Cha Atmasishte Ashwatantre Anapeksho Bhalavat Bhute Bhutani Bhuteshu Shicha Chavati Hanti Cha Atmasishte Ashwatantre Anapekshopi Bhalavat. Bhute Bhutani Bhutesha Shricha Chavati Hanti Cha Atmasishte Swatantre Anapekshopi Bhalavat. Bhutai, by some living beings. Bhutani, other living entities. Bhuta Ishaha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Master of everything. Srijati, creates. Avati, maintains. Anti, hills, cha, also, Atmasristai, who are created by him, Aswatantrai, not independent, Anapeksha, not interested in creation, Api, although, Balavat, like a boy. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Ki. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Master and Proprietor of everything, is certainly not interested in the temporary cosmic manifestation. Nonetheless, just as a boy at the beach creates something in which he is not interested, the Lord, keeping everything under his control, causes creation, maintenance, and annihilation. He creates by engaging a father to beget a son. He maintains by engaging a government or king to see the public's welfare, and he annihilates through agents for killing, such as snakes. The agents for creation, maintenance, and annihilation have no independent potency, but because of the spell of the illusory energy, one thinks himself the creator, maintainer, and annihilator. Responsibly, please. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Master and Proprietor of everything, is certainly not interested in the temporary cosmic manifestation. Nonetheless, just as a boy at the beach creates something in which he is not interested, the Lord, keeping everything under his control, causes creation, maintenance, and annihilation. He creates by engaging a father to beget a son. He maintains by engaging a government or king to see to the public's welfare. And he annihilates through agents of killing, such as snakes. The agents for creation, maintenance, and annihilation have no independent potency. Because of the spell of the illusory energy, one thinks himself the creator, maintainer, and annihilator. Purport. No one can independently create, maintain, or annihilate. Bhagavad Gita 3.27 therefore says, Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvashaha ahankara vimud atma kartaham iti manyate. The bewildered spirit soul, under the influence of the three modes of material nature, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by nature. Prakriti, material nature, as directed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, induces all living entities to create, maintain, or annihilate according to the modes of nature. But the living entity, without knowledge of the Supreme Person and his agent, the material energy, thinks that he is the doer. In fact, he is not at all the doer. As an agent of the Supreme Doer, the Supreme Lord, one should abide by the Lord's orders. The present chaotic conditions of this world are due to the ignorance of leaders who forget what they have been appointed to act by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because they have been appointed by the Lord, their duty is to consult the Lord and act accordingly. The book for consultation is Bhagavad Gita, in which the Supreme Lord gives direction. Therefore, those who are engaged in creation, maintenance, and annihilation should consult the Supreme Person who has appointed them and should act accordingly. And everyone will be satisfied and there will be no disturbances. Om Jnana Tamrandasya Kananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Meditam Jina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manovishtam Shtapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadammayam Daranti Swaparantikam Andeyam Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamaram Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Shcha Shri Rupam Shagajatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sujivam Sarvetam Savadutam Parajana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Kaduna Sindhu Dinobando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namustate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutadevi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindho Vinepacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Pastitare Sitarine. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, I humbly seek your blessings and your good wishes that I am able to speak some words of relevance on this incredible verse on purport from the sixth canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Here we're continuing the instructions given by both Narada Muni and Angira Muni to Maharaj Chitraketu after he's severely suffering because of the loss of his son. His son was known as Harsha Shoka, the cause of great suffering and also great jubilation and also great lamentation. And as we discussed previously, in the material world, whatever is a source of great material happiness will also come back around and become a source of material distress. Because it's explained in the Gita that the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress, like the appearance and disappearance of the winter and summer seasons. And so naturally, summer comes and then it's followed by autumn and then followed by winter and then it's followed by spring and summer again. It's a cycle. So we can see that someone can try their hardest to be materially successful, but because it's outside of their control. Many examples of people perhaps try and be very successful in business, and you read so many self-help books about how if you get up at 5 in the morning and you put in so much effort, etc., then you'll be successful, because this is what these other people did. These other people were maybe starting up some company in the garage and they just had this really positive mindset, and that's all it took. But you see people, they try that and they just fail, they get into serious debt. So there's causes outside of our control which impede upon material happiness, but then also give material happiness, seemingly causelessly. Happiness and distress will both come. So the real goal is to be equipoised. This is a word that's used in the Gita. Equipoised in both happiness and distress. Because, until we have this sense of serenity, this sense of calm, it's described, gravity, one of the aspects of a Brahman. Gravity, the sense of being grounded and not being so disorientated by material goings on. Then real philosophical inquiry can take place. So this is a prerequisite, is to understand that materially everything is actually a source of suffering, because if you take some happiness, and to accept that happiness you have to accept that amount of suffering as well, then you add happiness and suffering and you get suffering. You take suffering and it comes with also more suffering, it's still suffering. This is spiritual mathematics, but we're looking for happiness that is an annam buddhivardhanam, an ever increasing ocean of bliss. And this is what Lord Chaitanya is offering. And Prabhupada is given as a cut price, once in the day of Lord Brahma, maybe even rarer, we get this opportunity. And so we're full number one if we don't make most use of it and try and give it to other people. So here in the Prabhupada quotes the famous verse from the Bhagavad Gita, Prakriti kriyamanani guna karmani sarvashaha ahankara vimud atma kartaham iti manyate. So we see here that the Atma, the spirit soul, the Jiva, who's an eternal servant of Krishna, he comes into the material world, and the thing that makes him stick around is a false ego. Because if you're experiencing spiritual reality and then to somehow convince yourself that there's some happiness in the material world, it's not very feasible unless you have this false ego. The Sanskrit word also, you got ahankara. Ahan means I. Krishna says, aham sarvasya prabhavo, from me comes everything. Aham tvam sarva papebhyo, I will free you from all sinful. Ahan is a personal pronoun, and kara refers to creation. Kartaham iti manyate, as it says later. Ahankara therefore translates somewhat as the I maker, because the false ego is what gives us this illusory sense of I and mine. This is my family, this is my possessions, this is my body. It belongs to me, and I am the enjoyer, I am the controller. And it's described, this false ego is like a glue that binds us. It binds the pure spirit soul, who's never contaminated by matter. It cannot be cut by fire, withered by wind, moistened, etc. But when the false ego comes into play, then the spirit soul identifies with matter. And this is the real, the crux of the matter, is our identification. Because as we identify with matter, then we put our consciousness into matter. It's described in the 11th canto that the objects, when we begin to desire sense gratification, and the objects of the senses enter into our minds, and our minds enter into the objects of the senses. So there's this constant interaction, and this is the word entanglement that Prabhupada uses is very, very appropriate, because it's very entangling. So this is the potency of the false ego, is to bind us to this false reality. Adoksa Krishna Prabhu, he gives the example. There's one psychological experiment, and people are set up, and somehow their hand is put behind their back, and a fake hand is put here, made of rubber, but they're placing it on the desk, and it looks like this. So it looks like your hand, and so someone's coming along stroking the hand, and it's weird because naturally the body, I'm not sure if the subtle body ends up projecting itself onto this reality, but you begin to feel it a little way. And it's going on, and then suddenly out of nowhere, the experimenter brings out a hammer and then whacks it on this rubber hand. But because you spent the last sort of 5 minutes cultivating knowledge that this is actually part of me, even though it's completely separate from you, because you've been cultivating that false illusion, when the necessary, because it's material life, the necessary anxiety comes, and you become very, very distraught. And this shows the potency of identification. And that's why we were reading in Chaitanya Charitamrita recently the famous verse from, I'm not sure if it's from the Narada Pancharatrika, but it's quoted in the Nectar Devotion as well, the Sarvapadi Vinirmuktam Tadparatva Nirmalam Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhakti Ruchate. That when one engages in first class devotional service, there's two resultant actions. First of all, one becomes free from all material designations, all upadis, and one's senses become purified by being engaged in the service of the Supreme Lord, who is the master of the senses, Rishikesh. So again, I was asking Ashish Prabhu why these two aspects of being free from designations and the purification of the senses are so intimately linked in this verse. But after speaking to him and his explanation, it makes a lot of sense actually that the whole process of Krishna consciousness is reawakening our genuine identity. And to go about reawakening that identity, we have to engage in acting in that identity, you know. I was sometimes having a meditation. There's been times when I've struggled to sleep. And so lying in bed, trying to get to sleep, and just sort of maybe overthinking as my mind's somewhat too active sometimes. I'm thinking, what is it I'm actually doing? And I realize I'm actually pretending to be asleep. Like this, I'm lying there, I've got my eyes closed, I'm regulating my breathing, and every way externally I can, I'm trying to emulate being asleep. Because if I want to sleep when I just go out a run or I start doing loud kirtan or going on my phone, I'm not going to get asleep because these activities are opposite to what my end goal is. So even though I'm not yet asleep, I am pretending. You know, fake it till you make it is a famous phrase. I'm pretending to be asleep, and then before I know it, my alarm's gone off and I've woken up in the morning because, you know, through this transition, it's very, you know, sleep is a very subtle process. You're in bed, before you know it, your consciousness is sort of, it's turned down a notch, and then you're awake again when the alarm goes off. And so I wonder if, yeah, maybe spiritual life is somewhat like this. We're not yet spiritually awake, but we engage as if we are spiritually awake. We engage all our senses in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Master of the senses. Because this is what intrinsically we're supposed to do, you know. Similarly, if we're trying to be asleep and we're running about, it's an opposite. It's, you know, it's an action that's it's contrary to our end goal. Therefore, it's not going to give us a desired result. But if we do an action which is in line with our end goal, then it's fruitive. So similarly, we engage our senses in the master of the senses. And then we remember reading in the pastime of Narada Muni, it described how just like the thunder and lightning happens simultaneously, that he quit his material body and obtain a spiritual body. Now, it's not that we have to obtain a spiritual body in this lifetime. Goswami again, he says, Ihayasya haryadasya karmana manasagira nikalasu pipastashu jivan mukta uchate. So even as one is still embodied and seemingly engaged in material affairs, if he is 10% engaging his karmana manasagira, his activities, his thoughts and his words in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Jivan Mukta Uchate, he is said to be a liberated soul, even if he's in a material body. He's just yeah, serving some time. Because ultimately we realize there's no difference if we're fully engaged in devotional service. It doesn't matter where we are. We could be material world, spiritual world, hellish planets, heavenly planets. There's always opportunity to render devotional service. But when we come to a liberated platform. So this is a potency that by engaging in devotional service, even without full realization, even if we still have a false ego, even if we still think, you know, in terms of I and mine, my body, and my possessions, my family, my country, etc. Because this is very, very ingrained. You know, we can't just overnight, even philosophically, we might have understanding, but we can't overnight change these deep-seated, conditioned ways of thinking. But we engage in the service of Rishikesh, and then naturally, Sarvopadi Vinirmuktam, that we get free from these material designations. Because, just as when we pretend to be asleep, and then eventually we do become asleep, then we become free from the propensity of being awake and being conscious of our surroundings. So right now we're the opposite. We're materially asleep, but we pretend to be awake. And then as we actually engage more and more in the service of Rishikesh, um, then we become more and more aware of our constitutional position. Because, um, there's descriptions in the Nectar Devotion about, one should develop at a certain stage in spiritual life. One should begin to follow instructions from their spiritual master. Naturally, the development towards an attraction towards a particular uh, relationship with Krishna emerges. Even before this stage, just to come to the realization of our constitutional position as an eternal servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is very, very good. Because no matter what relationship with Krishna is, servitorship is always there. Krishna is always the supreme enjoyer. Bhoktaram yagitapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram suhridam sarvabhutanam yatpamam santimritsati shishikuratai mai prashashiki. So Krishna is the supreme enjoyer, no matter who we are. This is what it means to be a supreme enjoyer. Yes, it's only by engaging in devotional service that we can become free from these false material designations and become free from this illusion that I am the doer. Because the modes of material nature, they are so strong. Every single aspect of material life, your body, your thoughts, the food you eat, how you dress, how you work, any activities you perform, unless they're devotional service. In some sense, you have to be advanced devotional service as well. But unless it's devotional, then it's completely governed by the modes of material nature. But Krishna does say, Mam chayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatitjaitam brahma bhuyaya kalpate. That when one engages in devotional service, unflinching at any moment, that is, he at once transcends the modes of material nature. And comes to the level of Brahman, Brahma Bhutta. This is the potency of bhakti. But we have to probably engage in devotional service, we have to ado guru padashraya. We have to first steps take shelter of a bona fide guru, and then render service unto him, and inquire from him about the process of devotional service. The 64 limbs of devotional service is mentioned in the Nectar Devotion. The first, I think out of the first 10, 6 of them are dealing directly with Guru. That's how important it is, because without the spiritual master, then it's very difficult to render devotional service. It's described the mood when performing, deity worship. It's not that I am directly worshipping Krishna. I'm directly dressing Shishikunitai Mai Pushashi. I'm assisting my spiritual master in his service. That's why you see, many pujari, they have a picture of the spiritual master there. Similarly, when we make any offering to Krishna, it's not we directly offer it to Krishna. We offer it through the spiritual master. He's the via medium. So unless we're connected to the parampara, then there's Krishna doesn't accept our devotion as much because the spiritual master has they have credit with Krishna. Because of the strength of their devotional service, they have credit with Krishna. Therefore, when they plead to Krishna, please accept the offering of this conditioned soul who's sincerely trying to be engaged in your service, then Krishna listens because he likes to follow he likes to please his pure devotees. And so we see the problem in many spiritual circles is people, they don't want to accept a spiritual master as an ultimate authority. They want to accept themselves as their spiritual master. And they go around picking and choosing different philosophies. Some very nice things. You can see the holes in the hypocrisies within institutions, etc. Therefore, they don't want to surrender. They just want to, they say be like a bee and get the best bits from everywhere. But Jayadvaita Maharaj, His Holiness Jayadvaita Maharaj, he has a particular tenacity with words. He's very funny actually, and he says, if one accepts himself as a spiritual master, then he is a fool for a disciple. Because we've got no credit with Krishna. What is the potency of our service? It's very small. But then we look at Srila Prabhupada, and what's the potency of his service? But we can't comprehend the immensity of his service. And similarly, many of his disciples and grand-disciples. And this is the mood of the devotee. Is that I can in no way serve Krishna, But all I can do is I can engage and try my sincere most to serve those who are serving Krishna so dearly. Or even better than that, I can serve those who are serving those who are serving Krishna so dearly. Or even better than that, I can serve those who are serving those who are serving those who are serving Krishna so dearly. And this is the mood. Prabhupada was asked, everything in the material world is a reflection of the spiritual world. And Prabhupada said, yes. So where is pride in the spiritual world? And Prabhupada says, like this, I am proud by how many times I'm the servant. Because the further down the list you are, the servant of the servant of the servant of the servant of the servant, this is a cause for pride. There's a complete reversal, Janadapi Sunichena Tarorapi Sahishnana Manina Manadena Kirtanya Sadahari. Mahaprabhu, he gives this formula, and it's not a means to achieving Krishna Prem. This is the end. It's not that when you achieve advanced spiritual realization, you go back to Goloka Vrindavan, that you become suddenly puffed up and thinking that you're greater than trees, less tolerant, and you stop chanting. No, when you become spiritually realized, then even more so, Kirtanya Sadahari. Even more so, you're thinking you're lower than everybody else. So again, we're pretending to be asleep in order to fall asleep. But we're pretending to be more humble than a straw in the street, more tolerant than a tree. Because this is the symptom of one who's actually liberated. We engage in bhajana kriya, not bhajan initially. First we have some faith, we associate with devotees. And then there's the process of bhajana kriya. And this is different to bhajan, because bhajan means to be actually absorbed in a worship, to actually be absorbed and have taste and be pleasing to Krishna in our service. But when I'm engaging in these propensities, I can chant, I can sing, I can read, but it's not bhajan, it's bhajana kriya. It's the activities of bhajan. But by engaging in bhajana kriya, then anartha vritti takes place, we get purification, we come to a platform of steadiness, etc. And then and eventually then we can actually engage in bhajan. Gorkashore Das Babaji, the strength of his bhajan was so potent that he was withholding the tide of Kali Yuga. This is bhajan. To withhold the tide of Kali Yuga. But I can barely concentrate on the Maha Mantra for more than 10 minutes, I can't withhold the tide of my own mind. But nonetheless, it's to be engaged with determination and confidence. This is a necessity. Yeah. I'll pause here if there's any questions or comments, and please.
Thank you, bro, for the very nice class, very nice points, and very nice explanation, understanding overall. Like bhajan and bhajan kriya, very nice to hear this. Yeah. And also kind of the means and the end, very nice to understand that the practice in itself is not the means to get the end, it is the end itself. A couple of questions, Prabhu. So it says in the translation that nonetheless, just as the boy at the beach creates something in which he is not interested. And generally, is it not observed that whatever we do, we have a direct interest in it? Even before like coming into Krishna consciousness, is it not like people, whatever they do, desires, they want jobs, money, house, relationships and all, there is a direct interest in it. And trying to a bit struggling to understand what does it mean just as a boy at the beach creates something in which he is not interested. We create something in which we are interested.
Thank you very much for the question. It's good to come back to the verse. It is true. Prabhupada, he talks in the introduction to the Nectar Devotion that everything is governed by rasa, some taste, is what causes everything to move. In this context, just from my own reading of this verse, it seems like building a sandcastle. I imagine it's building a sandcastle. It's sort of the someone can do that without much taste. It's something a little bit almost whimsical. Very easy to create, and it's not that you invest so much time and energy. It's just something that's I remember doing it myself as a child, just sort of sitting on the beach. You put sand in a bucket, it turns upside down, there's a castle, and you can leave it. And then, or someone comes over and jumps in your sandcastle, and then, or the tide comes in and washes it away. And I remember once actually we built like a huge, not a sandcastle, it was like it was more than a sandcastle. It was quite impressive. They had many different turrets, layers. There was shells decorating all the windows. There's a moat system. We dug channels from the sea. We used to do this. Dug channels from the sea. It filled up the moat system, and it took us hours. And then the tide started coming in, and we were just desperately building barricades to protect it from the tide. You know, there's a whole group of us. A really, really nice experience. All these just children on the beach that know each other, and we're just building up barricades to protect it from the tide and things. But then eventually the tide came, and couldn't stop it. And just sense it was something we were very interested in, and so we're very emotionally distraught when the tide was coming. But I think in this sense, uh, this is the opposite. This is something done somewhat casually. What would be your thoughts on this?
Like the living entities create something in which we are interested, but our interest is always for the sort of the highest interest. It's because we are in oblivion. This is what I understand. Because we are in oblivion, we take this temporary to be eternal, and we are so desperate and hankering, searching for Krishna, that even a slight flickering momentary pleasure, we just are very desperate to latch onto it, leech onto it, like that. And as Prahlad Maharaj also explains in seventh canto, that we do not know what our real gati is Vishnu, but because living in illusory world, we so get observed, overwhelmed, taken over, that whatever is temporary, we take it to be very permanent and very real. And this is why we are not interested, as in we are aiming for eternity, but oblivionly, I think that okay, yes, this is what I am wanting, somewhat those lines.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a very nice analogy actually, because also to understand that the supreme absolute truth is Lord Krishna, you know, on the bank of the Yamuna playing the flute. He doesn't care. He's described actually. He's carefree. You know, no one has more. Sometimes no one has more responsibility. No, or such a great task, or so much to organize and orchestrate than Krishna. But Krishna himself, he doesn't. He's busy just having a good time. All this is undertaken by, expansions and plenary portions of plenary portions, and etc. etc. You know, Vrindavanam Prityaja Paramekam Nagachati. The Lord Krishna, he doesn't take one step outside of Vrindavan, because why would he? You know, uh, and so there's this aspect of being carefree, but nonetheless everything is working perfectly because um, it's arranged by his energies. So that's what you want to say.
Thank you, bro. And yeah, very nice as you explained. Like Krishna is the supreme enjoyer, has been, is, and will be, and the various rasas in which Krishna is served, and in all the rasas, the mood of servitorship is there. So even if like someone could be dominating over Krishna, but still the mood of servitorship is there, very much there. So thank you, Prabhu, for that point. Another question, like you mentioned on equipoised, right? Like this matra sparshas tu kvanteya, so being equipoised in happiness and distress. If I'm being equipoised in, say, even in happiness, if I have to be equipoised, then where do I find the motivation to be even happy or do something which is create something, bring something good? If at all I have to be just equipoised and
But it's like, do you want wet stool or dry stool? What we're being equipoised is is material affairs, uh, which are at best are temporary. At worst are temporary and full of suffering. You know, I guess the good thing about suffering is that in the material world is that it's temporary, uh, and the bad thing about happiness is that it's temporary. Um, but it's not that in the spiritual life we become like a stone. We very much you see devotees. If you just look at devotees, there's so much. There's no model for what a devotee is. because devotees are just so, they encompass all characteristics of being alive. You know, you see it because, you know, devotees are much less conditioned than, you know, ordinary jivas. And so the spirit soul is shining through so more. You know, Prabhupada talks about how they had, you know, was it bright faced. Uh, so we don't give up happiness. We just give up just being, you know, like Harsha Soka, his name. You know, this like to be so desperate for a son, you know, and then you have this one child, and you put all your dreams and ambitions into this child, thinking this is my source of happiness. He's going to save me. He's going to offer Pinda. He's Putra. He will save me from the hellish condition. I'm going to have such a loving relationship with him. He's going to take over my kingdom. He's going to be incredible. You go like this, and the mind is going and thinking, I need this, I need this, I need this, and then the son disappears, and then, you know, Maharaj Chichiketa is just completely distraught. Can't even act in the world, you know, because he's not equipoised. He's putting his, you know, shraddha means to put your heart into something, you know. So he's putting his heart into, you know, some, you know, sort of whimsical arrangement of material nature. You know, it's completely governed by illusion that he's come together in sexual intercourse with his wife, and somewhere or other, then this embryo is produced, and a jiva enters into it, and it's completely mechanical arrangement that he's not actually even desiring. You know, this propensity to procreate and have children is completely it's governed by the modes of material nature. It's present within every single species of life. So he's not, you know, as an individual, Maharaj Chichiketa isn't actually desiring to have a son. What he's desiring is having a loving relationship with the Supreme Lord. In his case, Lord Sankarshan is the Ishtadev. That's what he's actually desiring. Because he doesn't know that, he's in ignorance. And because of his ignorance, he's thinking that this combination or permutation of material nature is somehow going to be the ultimate source of his enjoyment. And although it does give him some temporary happiness, harsha shoka, then, you know, when it disappears, it causes him so much suffering. So that's why we need the saintly persons like Narada Muni and Angira Muni to give us this higher vision, or else we'll just, yeah, when we're too distraught, we can't even begin to think about spiritual knowledge, you know. That's why we need to remain equipoised, if this helps. Sorry. Anything else? Okay. I'll stop here. Grantaraj, Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Shri Gurutai Mahaprabhu ki, Jai Go Premanande.
Haribol. His Grace Panca Tattva Prabhu ki.